What happens when an exhausted lioness protects her wounded cub from a giant python, alone, under the scorching sun? She didn't wait for help, but the one who appeared at the last moment turned the whole story upside down in the most unexpected way. You'd think a lion would be the last animal to need help, king of the jungle and all that. Except we weren't in a jungle. We were in a stretch of sunburned dirt called the Senga Basin, Namibia's least glamorous tourist spot, unless you have a thing for dehydration and broken wildlife cameras. My name's Elias Gray, ex-biologist, part-time field medic, full-time headache for anyone trying to sweep cruelty under the rug. A few years ago, I walked out of a tenured research position because some committee full of stiff collars didn't want me publishing a report about illegal animal trafficking with university ties. Yep, the lions weren't the most dangerous predators I dealt with. Now I live in a trailer that smells like duct tape and coffee grounds, and I patch up animals no one wants to write documentaries about. It was supposed to be a simple supply run. I had a cooler of hydration packs, a janky drone battery, and about 4 hours of daylight left. I was following up on a trail cam alert, one of those fuzzy red blips that usually means a porcupine farted too close to the lens. Only this time, the movement pattern was weird, long, low, heavy. I didn't know it yet, but the Senga had just become someone's twisted idea of an exotic pet dump zone. About a mile in, I spotted tracks, something big, slithering, thick-bodied. It was dragging itself across the dried clay like it owned the place. I followed it, muttering to myself like a crazy man auditioning for a Discovery Channel blooper reel. Then I heard it. Not a roar, not a growl, a cry. It was the sound a lion makes when it's hurt and trying not to die. I dropped everything but the CO2 tank and machete and ran like someone had slapped a warrant on my name, down into a narrow ravine, the air thick with heat and that metallic tang of blood and panic. And there they were. A lioness, thin, dusty, eyes sharp like broken glass, and her son. At least I assumed he was her cub. Young male, maybe 4 years old. His back leg looked like it had been mangled in some poacher's nightmare trap. But that wasn't what froze me in place. Wrapped around him like a cursed necklace from a jungle horror story was a python. But not just any python. This thing was massive, reticulated, genetically bloated, the kind of snake you read about when Florida loses another pet owner. It shouldn't have been here. It couldn't have been here. But here it was, crushing the life out of a lion cub while his mother clawed and bit at it with everything she had left. For half a second, I stood there, my brain trying to file it all under not my business. And then that second passed. I ran straight into it. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just swung the machete with everything I had, right across the coils, aiming for muscle. The python recoiled, hissed like a gas leak, and tightened. The cub let out a sound that hit me in the ribs harder than any blow ever had. The mother lunged again, and this time I caught her eye. And no, don't romanticize it. It wasn't some spiritual bond. It was raw, primal desperation. I shoved the CO2 nozzle between the coils and pulled the trigger. A loud hiss. Cold gas erupted, clouding up around the snake's body. It wasn't lethal, but the sudden change in pressure was enough to confuse it. Just enough for it to loosen. The lioness didn't wait. She yanked her son out by the scruff like he was still a cub, dragging him a few feet away. The python hissed again, clearly annoyed that lunch was fighting back. I didn't stop to think. I threw a tarp over the beast, grabbed my tranq gun from the ATV bag, and loaded it with the only dart I had. I aimed, fired, and missed. Of course I did. That's when the real fun started. To be clear, this was only the beginning. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how this twisted story spirals from bad to absolutely unthinkable. Stay with me. You ever have one of those moments when time slows down and you think, well, this is how I go, trampled by my own bad judgment? Yeah. That was me, standing in a dirt pit with a pissed-off python the size of a pickup truck, holding a tranq gun that just coughed out its one and only dart into a rock. The snake whipped around with that kind of speed that makes your spine regret existing. The tarp I'd thrown earlier slid off like it was insulted. Its eyes locked on me, small, black, beady things full of ancient, hungry silence. And I, like a rational, stable adult, threw the entire tranq gun at it and ran. Now listen, I don't care how cool you think you are. When a reptile the size of a carnival ride comes after you, pride leaves the chat. I scrambled up the dry ridge like a squirrel late for church. Behind me, the snake surged forward, knocking over rocks and dragging its massive weight with disturbing ease. And the worst part? I heard the cub again, still alive, still gasping. His mother stood over him now, snarling at the python with this low, rumbling growl that made my chest vibrate. She was outmatched, that much was obvious, but you couldn't have told her that, not with the way she planted her paws like she was ready to take on a tank. I slid down the far side of the ridge toward my ATV, adrenaline doing its best impression of jet fuel. I grabbed the emergency flare, the crowbar, and, God bless my past self, one last CO2 cartridge tucked in the side pouch. I looked like a man about to fight a mythical beast with a firework and plumbing equipment. Back over the ridge I went. The python was circling now, not rushing. Number it was smart, calculating, waiting for the lioness to make a mistake, and her breathing was ragged. She was running on fumes and instinct. One wrong move and that snake would finish what it started. I didn't wait. I popped the CO2 and hurled it straight into the python's side. The hiss and the blast of cold air made it recoil again, just a twitch, but enough. I lit the flare and ran at it, waving the red flame like a maniac at a 4th of July barbecue gone very, very wrong. And it worked. The snake backed off, not far but enough to give me room. I dropped the flare in front of the lioness and turned, standing between her and the python. I'm not gonna lie, I was shaking so bad I could barely hold the crowbar. The air smelled like scorched earth and fear. My mouth was dry. My knees felt like wet cardboard. But I stood there anyway, and the python, maybe because of the flame, maybe because it finally realized lunch wasn't worth the fight, slithered backward, slowly, deliberately, like a sore loser exiting a poker game. It disappeared into the rocks, just like that. I didn't believe it at first. I kept the crowbar raised like it was a holy relic. But then I heard nothing, just the panting lioness, the rasp of the cub's breath, my own heartbeat trying to relocate to my ears. I turned and dropped to one knee beside the lion's. The cub looked awful. One leg was bent in a way legs aren't supposed to bend. His sides heaved like he'd run a marathon through a sandstorm. But he was alive. The mother just stared at me, not blinking, not moving, just watching. And for a moment, just a moment, it felt like the world stopped picking sides. I backed off slowly, keeping low, and went to grab the med kit from the ATV. I didn't know how long the calm would last, but I sure as hell wasn't going to let them die now. Not after that. This is it. The turning point. Everything you've waited for is right around the corner. Stick with me, because what happens next doesn't just change the story, it tears the whole damn thing wide open. I've patched up a lot of broken creatures in my life. Baboons missing fingers, cheetahs with ribs poking through their skin, an ostrich once that looked like it lost a fist fight with a weed whacker. But nothing hit me like this lion cub gasping through a crushed rib cage, his mother refusing to move even an inch away. Like I was the problem now. And honestly, I didn't blame her. You grow up wild in this world, you learn fast. Don't trust the two-legged ones. We're either hauling in cages, dropping baited traps, or worse, dropping exotic snakes in foreign soil like it's an amusement park. I opened my field kit with shaky hands. Tourniquets, saline, antibiotics. None of it made for a miracle. But maybe today we didn't need a miracle. Just a few good choices stacked back to back. I moved slow, like real slow. The lioness's ears twitched at every click of Velcro. Her eyes didn't leave me. Not even when I cut into a strip of bandage, not even when I pulled out the hemostat to close the bleeding on the cub's torn side. You want to know how terrifying it is to be 6 inches away from a wild lion while digging into her kid's flesh? It's like trying to defuse a bomb while the bomb is staring directly into your soul. But I did it. I cleaned the wound, flushed the dirt, sealed what I could. The leg was another story, crushed, purple and swollen. He'd limp for life if he kept it at all. I didn't know if the limb would survive, but right then, that wasn't the point. The point was keeping the spark in his chest going a few more hours. I gave him fluids, a sedative to calm the shock, sat back, let the silence settle. And that's when I heard it. Not the wind, not the python. A roar. Not from the lioness. Another. Then more rustling. Padding feet. Shadows moving on the ridge. I turned my head slowly and saw them. 3 lions, all adults. Muscular, scarred, moving like ghosts over the rocks. Males, big ones. They came down slow, measured, deliberate. The lioness lifted her head, let out a low chuff, and to my disbelief, they didn't charge, didn't circle. They stopped right beside her, looked at me, and sat. Now, I'm not going to pretend I understood what was happening. But if I had to guess, she called them, and they came. Not to fight, not to threaten, but to witness. One of them nudged the cub's side with his nose, then looked back at me. I swear to you, if judgment had a face, it was right there, covered in dust and whiskers. I stood up slowly, arms open, heart pounding, and then they turned, all of them. They flanked the cub, surrounding him like a moving wall. The lioness rose, nuzzled her son once, and joined the others. Together they began walking, guarding him back up the ridge, back into the wild. I didn't speak, didn't move, just watched. And I swear, at the top of that rise, the lioness turned back, just for a second, not as a thank you, not as submission, but as an equal. She looked at me like someone who'd seen the worst this world offers and still chose not to bite the hand that tried to heal. That's more grace than most people offer each other these days. I packed my kit in silence. My hands didn't stop shaking until I reached the ATV. The snake was still out there. So were the traps. So were the cowards who dropped monsters into ecosystems like it's their sandbox. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was fighting alone. Some stories aren't just survival tales. They're proof that respect still means something, even in the wild. And if the lions remember, maybe we should too.